Welcome back to Every Naval Battle in History. In episode 6, we reach an important point in the history of naval warfare, one where we have a record of what actually happened. It's a flawed record, written entirely from the Greek perspective by Herodotus, but it's something, and it's a cracking yarn. Some of it might even have happened. The events in this episode occurred in 494 BCE. For the first part of the Ionian Revolt, check out episode 5, which covered the events of 3 years before. With that out of the way, let's get stuck into the epic battle at sea featuring Phoenicians, Lesbians, stop sniggering, Egyptians, Chians, and a cast of rogues and turncoats. A quick recap. Strong contender for the worst humans of all time top 10 was a chap called Aristogoras. Having inherited the position of tyrant of Miletus, an Ionian Greek city in the Persian Empire, he decided the best way to get ahead in the world was to invade the Greek island of Naxos and capture it for the Persian Empire. To this end, he borrowed a lot of money from Persian sources, and then failed after a lengthy siege to capture Naxos from the Greeks. Now owing a lot of money, Aristogoras decided the best way out of trouble was to whip up his fellow Ionian Greeks into a revolt against the Persian Empire. After convincing Athens to support him, an Athenian army burned down the Persian regional capital city of Sardis and attracted the undivided attention of the Persian king Darius. Cyprus joined the revolt, and a Greek force sailed south to support them, returning claiming victory. The important detail that the Persians successfully landed an army on Cyprus and crushed the revolt there does make one wonder just how victorious the Greek fleet had really been. 3 years later, a joint Persian fleet of Egyptians, Phoenicians, Cilicians, a region of Turkey, and Cypriots, 600 strong according to Greek sources, converged on the centre of the Ionian Revolt, Miletus. The Greeks had a plan. Miletus had strong walls. It could hold off a Persian army for some time. So the combined Greek force made for the island of Lade, which is just off the coast from Miletus, only a couple of kilometres. They were hoping to intercept the Persian fleet at sea. Facing the Persian armada was a mixed Greek fleet. Chios provided 100 ships. Miletus brought 80. Lesbos, stop snickering, that's from the island of Lesbos, and yes, where the word lesbian comes from, provided 70. Samos sent 60. Teos provided 17. Priene 12. Erythrae 8. Myus 3. And Phocia 3. Bear in mind that within a lifetime, Phocia had fielded a fleet of 60 ships at the Battle of Alalia off the coast of Corsica. They had fallen far in the intervening years. You can hear more about that encounter in episode 4. The Persians, despite outnumbering the Greeks, were apparently concerned by the size of the Greek fleet. They sent the former tyrants out to have a chat with their rebellious subjects, with these instructions. Men of Ionia, let each one of you now show that he has done some good service to the king's house. Let each one of you try to separate your own countrymen from the rest of the allied power. Set this promise before them. They will suffer no harm for their rebellion. Neither the temples nor the houses will be burnt, nor will they in any way be treated more violently than before. But if they will not do so, and are set on fighting, then utter a threat that will restrain them. If they are defeated in battle, they will be enslaved. We will make eunuchs of their boys, and carry their maidens captive to Bactra, and hand over their land to others. While they all said no to these offers, very foolishly each of the Ionian camps thought they were the only ones who'd been made an offer, and apparently didn't consider the possibilities that their allies might make a deal. In deference to tiny Phocaea's heritage, and possibly to stop the bigger fleets feuding, a Phocaean was placed in charge of the Greek force. His name was Dionysius. He made this announcement to the allies. Our affairs, men of Ionia, stand on the edge of a razor, whether to be free men or slaves, and runaway slaves at that. If you now consent to endure hardships, you will have toil for the present time, but it will be in your power to overcome your enemies and gain freedom. But if you will be weak and disorderly, I see nothing that can save you from paying the penalty to the king for your rebellion. Believe me and entrust yourselves to me. I promise you that, if the gods deal fairly with us, either our enemies shall not meet us in battle, or if they do, they shall be utterly vanquished. Dionysius set about a rigorous training regime of intensive rowing for the sailors and combat training for the marines. While there are few times in history that any leader has been accused of doing too much training, The problem is almost always too little. In this case, the exhausted sailors refused to get out of bed, or at least leave their camps, and various Ionian leaders looked at the mess and started wondering if cutting a deal with the Persians was a better idea. The Samians in particular wanted out, and later blamed the chaos about the training, rather than admitting they wanted bags of Persian gold. Into chaos the Persians struck. Herodotus records that the Greek battle line was, from east to west, Miletus, Priene, Maeus, Teos, Chios, Erythrae, Phaeacia, Lesbos, Samos. Early in the battle, the Samians, on the western wing of the battle line, hoisted their sails and abandoned the battle, a force 60 strong. Seeing the Samian fleet departing, the Lesbians decided the whole thing was a bad idea and also set course for home. The remaining Greek fleet would have been in an impossible situation at this point. Herodotus recorded, "Which of the Ionians were brave men or cowards then in that sea fight, I cannot exactly say, for they all blame each other." One force which did distinguish themselves was the fleet from the island of Chios, which fought the Persians to a standstill and was able to slip away at the end of the battle, despite suffering atrocious casualties. Aristogoras had run away, leaving the Ionians to their fate before the battle began. From here, the rest of the Ionian Revolt was a mopping up operation for the Persians. Dionysius the Phaeacian would go on to a career of piracy, operating out of Sicily and preying on Carthaginian shipping. But unstoppable forces were now in motion, and the Greco-Persian Wars would rage for another 45 years. More episodes to come. We've got a lot of ground to cover as we take on Every Naval Battle in History.